Welcome to the Spheres of Spirit with Nancy Myers, aka the Lady of the Light. Nancy will discuss the everyday magic and wisdom of spirit which surrounds each of us, waiting to be discovered. She will share some of her remarkable orb photos, proving that our angels, guides, loved ones in spirit, and even pets surround us and guide us in our physical world. During this episode, Nancy will discuss one of the many spheres or aspects of spirit available to us based on her orb photography. She will also share a special channeled message from her guide, Leonini, and do an oracle card reading to help guide you along your personal spiritual adventure. And now, here is your host, orb photographer, author, medium, and speaker, Nancy Myers.
Hi, welcome to the show. I am your host, Nancy Myers, and I am super excited about today's show. The magic that we're going to talk about today is the magic of the Emerald Isle, Ireland. I just got back from a trip to Ireland, and if you follow my show, you know that I kind of travel all over the world because I've been asked to, and I go to all the ancient sacred sites and take pictures. And I always come back changed. And I always go with expectations that something wonderful is going to happen. And this trip was no different. But I have to tell you how this one came along because it was kind of fascinating. About 7 years ago, I went to a big group reading, and Cindy Keza was the medium. And she picked me out of the audience and she said, "Oh, I have your dad here." Now, my dad was 100% Scottish. Both his parents were from Scotland. But she said to me, "Your dad is here and he's telling me that you're going to be going to Ireland." And I said, "Well, no, I'm not." And she said, "Oh, yes, you are." And she said, "He said that you're connected, past lives, or you're connected and you need to go." So I always thought that that was a little bit strange, number one, because he was Scottish, but I don't have any Irish blood that I knew of, except when Ancestry.com came out. I did find out I was 20% Irish. But anyway, so I kept trying to go to Ireland. I'd line up a trip or I'd have something lined up or it fell through or whatever, and I've talked on the show a little bit about divine timing. Things happen when they're supposed to happen. So this trip came up and I signed up for it and we went in September. And what's so interesting about that is I stood at one of the ancient sites, and I'll tell you about it in a minute. But I stood there and I said, "Dad, I made it." And on that day was his birthday. So that's how the magic first started. But so let me take you through because I have some amazing photographs to share with you, and the stories behind them I hope you find very interesting. So one of the first places that we went to on this tour, we were in Dublin, of course, and we went to the oldest church, I think it is. It's called Christ Church Cathedral. And that church was built, they said, all the way back to 1030. I think it was a wooden structure back then, but it was built by, of all people, a Norse king and the very first bishop of Dublin. But in 1152, it was incorporated into the Irish church, and I think that's when they started the construction of this one. So we were walking around that church, and of course, I take pictures. And I don't know if you can see it, but and again, these will be posted here on OMTimes and also on my website, so you can go back and really study these orb photos. But you see that beautiful blue orb. And so when I zoomed in on it, and I'll show you that in a minute, I could see a gentleman's face. Well, as we took the tour through the church, the guide told us that Dublin's kind of like patron saint or saint, at least of the church, is a gentleman by the name of Lawrence O'Toole. And again, he was there in 1152. and he died in 1160. He did a lot of great things for the Irish people. And when he died, he was on his way to Rome or something, but he died in northern France. They said they buried him in northern France. I don't understand this. I can't explain it. But for whatever reason, they took his heart out of his body and they said they brought his heart back to his beloved Dublin. That's where he wanted, I don't know, that's where they thought his heart should be. So the church had this beautiful heart-shaped metal enclosure and locked, and it was behind like a steel grate, and it was on display for everybody to see. You couldn't see the actual heart, but you could see the container. Well, in 2012, vandals broke into the church, pried open those bars, and stole it. Who would want a heart of a saint? And there were so many other valuables there in this church, especially underground, gold and silver and incredible. But that's all they took was this heart. Well, after a while, things started happening, not good things, to these people that stole the heart. People started dying, people started getting sick. And so in 2018, the police got a call, and the call was from the people who stole the heart, and they said, "We buried it in such and such a place. It's yours. Come and get it." So they did go and get the heart that was right where the vandals said, and they brought it back to the church, and now it's in a very protective case. But when I zoomed in on this, I could see this face and I thought, I wonder if this really is St. O'Toole. So if we can get the next picture up, Chris, please. So there's the blue orb. Now, this one is a little bit fuzzy, but there's a man with a round face. Now, do we have an exact image of St. Lawrence from, the 1100s? I don't think so. So, but what he's going to do is he's in spirit will appear in a form so that I can identify them. And when I looked at the orb, I thought, well, there's a man. He has a very round face and very small eyes. And when I thought, well, could this be St. O'Toole? And I found this image, and you can see the image is a very round face and small eyes. Now, I can't prove it to you, but obviously his spirit must have been present and active because something happened to those thieves that made them return the heart. And I think St. O'Toole now is very happy. So anyway, that was my story about my first orb on the first day. So thank you, Chris. So the next place that we stopped, we went to Newgrange, which is near the Boyne River. Now, Newgrange, they call it an ancient tomb. It's not a tomb, it's a temple. And it's a huge earthen mound, and we could go in. I wasn't allowed to take pictures inside, but it's aligned to the solstices, and they reenacted when the solstice light would come in and light up shoot all the way down the passageway into the opening in the middle of the temple and light up. I mean, it was a fascinating thing to see. But as we're walking, you have to park and then you walk through parts of the valley. The grounds are absolutely stunning. And we walk over this bridge. And we had two guides, and one of my guides, Eugene, he is Irish. I was walking with him, and he's paused on the bridge, and he reached in his pocket and he pulled out hazelnuts. And I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Would you like to throw one in the river?" And I said, "Sure. Why am I doing this?" And there is a myth in Ireland that um, the salmon are the salmon of knowledge. Now, there's all kinds of stories about there was one fish, or he was in a well, or he got eaten. But the myth, nonetheless, is that salmon have the wisdom of the entire universe because it is said let me find this so I can read this to you. According to Irish mythology, the first thing to ever come into creation was a hazel tree, and in its branches contained all the knowledge of the universe. And these hazel trees grew around the Boyne River. And as they would drop the hazelnuts into the water, then the salmon ate them, and that's how they gained the knowledge of the universe. So I thought it was really kind of cool that, we stopped to do that. Now hang on to that. I'm going to get back to it. But I wanted to tell you that while I was walking up to Newgrange, that's what I did. And then when I got to Newgrange and I stood there on the equinox on my dad's birthday, I mean, it was just so magical for me to see that. So we left Newgrange and we go to a place called Fornox Temple. It's about 10 miles southeast of Newgrange. And I tell you that because of the close proximity. Now, this place had an earthen mound temple, very small, but you could walk right in. And when we got there, we had the whole place to ourselves. But first, we did this ceremony and meditation up on top of the mound. So, if we can get that next picture, Chris. So here we are. This was taken by one of the tour attendees. She didn't go up the steps, but she stood down there and took the picture of us. And the group leader, her name is Stephanie Phelps. She was wonderful. She's also a shaman. So we kind of did a shamanic ceremony up there. And I have to tell you, I mean, just this picture to me, yes, the light is at the bottom, but that again is lens flare because the camera's being pointed right into the sun. But as we stood up there, all of a sudden, hundreds and hundreds of crows started circling us. It was really the timing of it. Could it have been coincidences? Yeah. But like Albert Einstein said, I think, and coincidences are God's way of staying anonymous. But I was going to, oh, here it is. So they circled us, and then they landed in the trees around us until we finished our ceremony. Now, to me, everything is a sign. Everything has significance. So I looked up, okay, what is the spiritual meaning of crows, when they appear? And here's what I found. It's like a gathering of spiritual forces offering protection, guidance, and messages from the unseen world. It could mean you're not alone in your journey. The spirit world is watching over you. Seeing many crows together could signify change and transformation in your life. And when I say we all came back changed from this trip, I am not joking. So we then came down off the mound, and you can walk right in. So we did ceremonies on the inside. And then I stayed a little bit longer after and took some pictures. And these are the ones that I want to share with you. So if we can get the next picture, Chris. So this is as I'm standing in the entrance and I'm pointing into the circular room. And there was a little indentation there. And of course, you can see the orb straight ahead. It was kind of a bluish orb. And when I zoomed in, I rather gasped. And I don't normally do that, but this one was incredible. So if we could get the next picture, Chris. I told you the story of the salmon and the salmon wisdom, and I made an offering to the salmon. There's a salmon in the orb. These are side-by-side pictures of the same orb, but the one that I outlined for you so you can see, it's like the front of his face with his mouth going whoop, whoop, whoop. Acknowledging, thanking a spiritual significance. I have to tell you, I've not gotten a salmon in an orb before. So I just found that again. Was that coincidence? I don't think so. I don't think so. So the next picture, I looked up, um, Chris, you're funny. My producer just wrote, seems fishy. So I looked up on the ceiling, and now, yes, the ceiling has been reworked, but there's a grate or something in the middle of the ceiling. Now, I told you that this particular earthen mound is about 10 miles southeast of Newgrange. Now, Newgrange, and if you followed some of my shows, you know that I talk about or have talked about the ley lines, the energy lines, the dragon lines. And so I looked up, okay, yes, Newgrange is on an intersection of some major ley lines or dragon lines. But there is also one that follows down right to this temple, right to this earthen mound, fornix. And and again, I call these dragon lines. And when I looked up at the ceiling, I don't know about you, but there's an orb and it drew my attention up to the middle of the ceiling. But that to me looks like the eye of a dragon. And I just thought it was incredible that that's how it appeared on my camera. So, all these things are leading me, telling me, giving me clues, and we're gonna learn of some more clues and stories as we go along. So, one of the things that Spirit did, and if you saw my show again, talking about the eye of the dragon, and why I noticed that and why it made me think of that. And I did a show on dragons. I showed you my dragon that's over me. I talked about the ley lines, the dragon lines, and I also did a show on symbols. And Spirit one night gave me a vision in my dreams. I should have worn it today. It looks like kind of like the Mercedes symbol in a triangle. And and I thought, "Well, why are you giving me this Mercedes symbol?" But I looked it up, and, the symbol was called the Eye of the Dragon, and it's a very ancient and very powerful symbol. So, again, Spirit's pulling all this together for me and for us and to let us know, "Pay attention. Hey, you need to see this. You need to make note of this. You need to be aware of this." So, the next place that we went to after this amazing time at the river and in Newgrange and at Fornox Temple and the Crows, um, we went to a place called Glendalough. And Glendalough is in a valley. It's actually a glacial valley, and it's one of the biggest national parks in Ireland. And it's just beautiful. When you think of Ireland and the green, lush foliage and the rivers and the magnificent waterfalls. There was one waterfall there that must have had 6 different ways that the water cascaded back down into the river. It was just an amazing experience. But also there, it's home to one of the most, or one of the oldest, monastic complexes. And the valley is made up of, 2 lakes, an upper and a lower. So there's a lot of water there. There's a lot of stories and myths and legends of and what's Ireland famous for? Fairies and leprechauns and lights and all kinds of energies. And when you walk through there, you go, it's almost like you walk back in time because it's so well preserved. You don't really see anything man-made, it's kind of virgin landscape, but you feel like you're walking in a fairyland. And this this monastery. It's one of the oldest and most well preserved, and a lot of things we walk through there. And I captured a lot of things, but I'll have to do that on another show because I don't have time with everything that I want to show you. But the monastery was built, or the foundation, reportedly around 600 AD. So these buildings, this area, has been like this for a long, long time. So, the park, it's called Wicklow Mountains National Park, and it's, almost 60,000 acres. So, I applaud Ireland for preserving this, and, the history of the monastery, the magic of the monastery and the buildings. There's towers and cemeteries and, so many things that, you can visit there. But, one of the things that, uh, we did. Now, you have met my friend who I traveled with. This was Paulina. Paulina and I went together. She has been on my show. This is our 3rd trip together. And so we walked around during the day, and I said to Paulina, "I've gotta come back here at night and walk through here and see what I can get." And she said, "Absolutely." So that's what we did after dinner. We got our flashlights and we went out, and we were pretty much the only ones out in this vast area, which can be intimidating because there aren't any lights. It's pretty dark. And there was some cloud cover, so unfortunately that we couldn't see too many of the stars. But but then you get into the lull of the water, and all fear kind of falls away. And so we we decided we were going to take some pictures. Now, I'm going to tell you, or remind you again, on another show I talked about some of my guides, and one of my guides, which was really a shock to me when I found this out. I had a reading by a medium, Rebecca, who has also been on my show, Rebecca Rosen. And she told me, she said, "You have a guide, and he's a leprechaun." And I went, "What?" And, she said, "Yeah, in fact, he wants me to tell you his name is Lucky," and I went, "Okay, sure, right." Well, that night, and I've shown this picture, when I went into my backyard, there was an orb, and I took a picture, and there was, an image of the leprechaun, just like kinda like Lucky on the Lucky Charms cereal box. That's how he presented himself. He has since been in, maybe 3 or 4 orbs. I have seen him come back and back and back. And so I'm wondering, is this my connection, to Ireland? But I also have a connection to the elemental world. For those of you who have read my 2nd book, you will know my connection with the fairies and the elementals. But, when I was there in Ireland, I could there was just this magic in the air. And so anyway, I wanna tell you a little bit, about the origin of leprechauns, since I'm in the land pretty much where they originated. So the tales of these small creatures first emerge in the 8th century, when legends about tiny dwellers, circulated among the Celts. Their name is thought to come from the word Le Corpon, meaning small body, and they are said to be only 2 to 3 feet tall. So, where do leprechauns live other than Ireland, but where in Ireland? So, the leprechaun, it is said, can only be found in Ireland unless they appear in an orb in my backyard in California, in rural areas away from the general population. So, this whole national park is just a haven for fairy activity and for maybe leprechauns, right? So it is said that they burrow deep in underground caves and entrances. The entrances are hidden, and they can be found in a hollow trunk or a fairy tree, which there are many. The fairy trees are hawthorn trees, and there are many hawthorn trees in this park. And they find safety away from humans because humans always want according to the myth, you catch a leprechaun and you get 3 wishes. So I'm going to take a little break here before I go into the next couple of pictures and show you then what we captured at night. So hang on, we're going to take a short break and then I'll be right back.
OMTimes TV. The story told in Entering the Light Fantastic, Discovering Life After Life Through Orbs, is about Nancy Meyer's spiritual and emotional rising from the devastating ashes of loss caused by the sudden and unexpected passing of her son Robbie. Just like the legend of the reborn phoenix, Nancy's life purpose and focus was transformed. With the help from her son in spirit, Nancy found herself providing proof through orbs that our souls do not die with our bodies. In her second book, Encircled by the Light Fantastic, A Deeper Journey into the Light with Orbs, Nancy continues chronicling her path of gaining spiritual knowledge and expanding acceptance of what is possible, while traveling to many sacred and ancient sites around the world. She shares these experiences with you along with her photographs of remarkable spirit encounters. Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. OMTimes Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, OMTimes offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an OMTimes magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on OMTimes TV and broadcasting it across the extensive OMTimes radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. OMTimes. Open yourself to the possibilities.
Is it time yet?
It's time.
Let's start time for dinner.
Oh,
I'm going to take those.
Pasta dinner.
Donating pet food is one of the many ways you can help families in your community. Pets and people belong together. Learn more at petsandpeopletogether.org.
And we're back. So Pauline and I go out at night. Now she's been with me for a while and she's gotten some orbs by me. And so I asked her to take a picture of me while we were in the forest. And this next picture is the one that she captured. So I stood there and I called in the elementals and I said, "Could you come in?" And you can see that orb is directly over my head. Well, I was thrilled with the orb being over my head, and it wasn't until a couple of days ago that I really studied the orb and I went, "OMG, I've got to share this on the show." So when I looked closely, if we can go to the next picture, Chris. Now, I've drawn him to the right. Again, these are side-by-side close-ups of the orb. If you can see with your spirit vision, you will see a man with a hat. You can almost see the buckle. You can see his beard and hair down to about here. And this is not the leprechaun of the Lucky Charms. This is, and I did a little research, and I'm going to hold this up here. And maybe you can see, this is the more traditional, older versions of the leprechaun. Oh, I'll hold that up again. Thank you, Chris. But you can see the tall hat, the beard, and the buckle. And can we bring that picture back up, Chris? And I mean, and there he was, right above my head. Is this the true version of my guide, Lucky, or is this another version or another leprechaun? I don't know, but I do know that this appeared directly over my head when I called in the elementals. And I thank Paulina, she's getting to be a pretty good orb photographer herself, for taking this photo. It was quite shocking to me, and I hope you can see him. I hope that you can. Again, I'm not a graphic artist. I do the best I can with a mouse outlining them. But if you see the outline, it kind of orients your eyes to where it is. If you kind of look for the hat, then the rest of him and his shoulders will fall into place. So thank you, Chris. It was so reassuring to me, and it tied up so many loose ends. My dad told me, you have a connection to Ireland, maybe in a past life, maybe. And to have that leprechaun appear directly over my head, it was so, um I'm trying to find another word for confirming, but it's, "Oh, dad, is that what you were talking about?" You know, if my dad would have told me back then that I had a leprechaun as a guide, and I'm gonna meet him in Ireland, I wouldn't that reading would have made no sense to me. It was before I was told and captured the leprechaun from Rebecca. But, I mean, that's kind of far out there, right? Come on, guys, that's really far out there. But, and maybe that's why my trip kept getting canceled, because of the divine timing. I wasn't ready to see and feel and capture the images, and to meet these people. So anyway, that was my leprechaun story. So now the next picture, we're still walking through Glendalough, and I so many, but I had to pick. So if we could bring the next picture up. So this one is really kind of magical for me. You can see the orb right in the center. It's kind of faint, but it is kind of a purple hue. I want to tell everybody, I don't manipulate these pictures. I will brighten them up, because when I download them on the computer, sometimes they get a little darker. And I want to make sure that you can see the image. The best place always to see these is on the back of my camera, but I can't show that. So I do brighten them up just a little bit so that you can see these images. Now, those lights that you see kind of in a mist, they weren't there. There was no lights there. There was no water there. We were just, I was just taking a picture. So are those the lights and energies of the elemental world? I would like to think so. This was one of the only pictures of the whole night that I had these little lights in them. But that's not all that this picture has. If I can draw your attention down to the bottom middle, you'll see that light green area. Now, I did not outline this because I think it'll be better for you if you can work a little harder and look for this face. There is a face in there. And when I looked at it, I went, it looks like the Green Man. Now, I don't know how many of you know of or have heard about the Green Man. My first, and we can just leave this picture up for a little bit, Chris. I first heard about the Green Man on my very first trip in 2011 when I went to Scotland, and I went to Rosslyn Chapel. Most of us know Rosslyn Chapel from the Da Vinci Code, but I have shown pictures from that in the past. But the Green Man, the images of the Green Man are everywhere, sculpted all over the church. It's a man's face, and usually he's usually surrounded by green leaves, green foliage. Most of the time, they're oak leaves. And they'll even be coming out his nose, and they'll make up his beard. Now, I have to tell you, that the green man has been baffling for a lot of people. But right now, I'm going to show you the book. Oh, I'll show it to you later. I'm reading a book that is talking about the green man. But the green man goes way back again to the pagan roots. Sometimes he was called the oak man. You'll find him mentioned and throughout some Arthurian myths and tales. Um, and another, but what it is he's associated with um, the power of nature, the cycles of nature, the birth, life, death, rebirth, kind of cycle of nature. Pagans revered nature. They knew that that's where they drew. That's what sustained them. Without the power of nature, they wouldn't exist. So in pagan, in druids, the power of nature was very important. There's even things of Robin Hood. When you go way back to his beginnings, the myth of Robin Hood, he can be tied back to the Green Man. And here's another interesting fact that I thought fascinating. The Green Man image, the sculpted image of the Green Man in churches throughout Europe far outnumber the images of Jesus Christ. So why is that? Well, again, when Catholicism moved in and wanted to convert the pagans, they built their churches on these sacred pagan sites. A lot of the sacred pagan sites were ley lines, and they were dedicated to nature. So, in order to give the pagans a reason to come to church, they incorporated a lot of their symbols, not just the green man, but this one I wanted to talk about was the green man. And again, it represents the power of nature, cycle of birth, rebirth. It should be birth, death, and rebirth. Also, the green man is associated with the myth and legend of St. George. You know, it's fascinating when you're on this journey and this spiritual. When you go back or you hear of something and you go, where did that come from? Where did that start? And you peel back the layers and you go back into history and you go back into the meaning of the words. It makes so much more sense. And then you see how it's evolved, but you see why it was important. And so the green man was very, very important. And again, so important that the Catholic Church or Christian Church incorporated that symbolism into their churches. So the next time you see a green man, you think, that's weird. I have also seen, and I was in Portugal, a green woman. It's the only one that I've ever seen, but there was a green woman in Portugal. So that's found all over. So when I looked at that, and it's green, and I can see the face of the man, hopefully you can see the foliage that surrounds him. So I think I captured in one photo the orb, the fairy lights, the energy, and the green man. I don't know about you, but I got goosebumps. So thank you, Chris. So let's go to the next picture if we can, because this one I thought was extremely interesting. Again, we're still in Glendalough National Park, and I took this picture and I looked at it and I went, that looks like a wheel. Now, sometimes when I look at orbs, I get ideas or they'll give me messages or things pop into my head. And what popped into my head was, is there a Celtic wheel? Is there such a thing as a Celtic wheel? Maybe you can see the spokes on that, or it's broken down into sections. Well, I Googled it, and yes, there is a Celtic wheel. It goes back again to the pagans. It's called the Wheel of the Year. And I'm just going to read this to you real quick. The Celtic calendar focused on the cyclical changes of the seasons. The original Celts celebrated 4 fire festivals, evenly spaced throughout the year, celebrating the transition of the sun throughout the seasons. These included Samhain, which is coming up. It's October 31st. Imbole, which is February 1st. Beltane, which is May 1st, or Bealtaine. And Lugnasad. I know I just totally butchered that, which is August 1st. Now, these festivals are often combined with solstices and equinoxes, but they come from the paganistic sources. These quarter festivals then that were added to this also included Yule, Midwinter, March 21st, and Midsummer. So seasonal changes, again, we go back. And this picture, by the way, was taken right after I got the Green Man. And it was, again, emphasizing how important nature, how important the spiritual, the seasonal changes were to the Celtic people. They depended on this wheel to tell them when to plow, sow, harvest, and rest. And the turning wheel represents, again, the continuing cycle of birth, death, and rebirth in nature. So, why am I getting all this stuff? Why is all this stuff coming up? Because I think we've forgotten. I think we've forgotten the importance of our connection to Mother Nature, to Gaia, because without that, we don't exist. And we need to go back to our roots. Perhaps this is why we're in such turmoil right now, and why the earth is convulsing, literally, and changing, and not for the good, because we have forgotten the reverence, the spiritual connection. And maybe this is coming out for me to share with you, to get back to our roots, to realize even the very planet that we live on is a living being. Okay, so as if this wasn't magical enough, I took another picture. And it was a picture. I'm not going to bring it up yet because I'll show you in a minute. It was a blue orb. And when I zoomed in, and Paulina was with me, and I said, Paulina, do you happen to know? I said, I see a female in this picture, in this orb. And she's got hair. Oops, sorry, keep hitting my microphone. She's got hair about, just below her chin, very square jaw. I said, and I'm being reminded of the Statue of Liberty. I see a torch, and she's looking at the torch. And Paulina said, no, I don't know anybody like that. And I said, well, I wonder why I'm being shown this. The Statue of Liberty keeps coming up. So the next day, we go to a very sacred place. It's called St. Bridget's Well. And it's a well that's been around for a very long time. And Ireland has a saint and she was an actual person, called St. Bridget. And they have built a center around the well. Many people come from all over to hold ceremony, to collect the water. But let me tell you a little bit about St. Bridget. St. Bridget of Ireland is one of many Irish saints who have been associated with ancient Celtic pagan gods and goddesses. The Celtic goddess Bridget, Brigit, or Brigid, or Brig, whose name means exalted one, was of the Tuath de Danann. Now that is said to be, some believe, that's where the fairies and elementals, they used to live above ground. There was a war, they were driven underground. But anyway, so she was of the Tuath de Danann, and the daughter of a king. So she's associated with spring, with fertility, healing, poetry, and smithcraft. She is credited with creating the ancient tradition of keening, which is a form of weeping and singing, and is carried on to this day in rural Ireland, especially at wakes and funerals. So the goddess Brigid was syncretized or blended with Saint Brigid during the Middle Ages. Now, Saint Brigid was an actual person, but this was a process whereby the practices, beliefs, and traditions of a Christian saint were merged, blended, and assimilated with an earlier, often mythological character. It is no coincidence that both Brigid and the actual saint who lived in Kildare and Brigid, the mythological goddess of old of Ireland, are both associated with the coming of spring. So there is a St. Brigid feast day, which is February 1st. And when we went to the well, they have a statue of St. Brigid. So if we can bring up the next photo, Chris, because to me this is fascinating. So there is on top, and again, you might have to look at this later, but there's the orb up on the top. You can see the lady. She's looking to the left of the screen. You can see her short hair. You can see her square kind of jaw, and I kind of outlined her in the orb next to that orb, just to help you orient your eyes. Sometimes what I show you, you can't see because it was meant for me, but I'm just sharing the message that I got. But when I went to St. Bridget's Well, there was this statue of St. Bridget. And what is she holding? I have goosebumps. A torch, just like the Statue of Liberty. So, did she come to let me know that we would meet at the well? Is she part of that land in Glendalough, even though this is in Kildare? Perhaps she can go everywhere, right? She was an ancient, and her story is incredible. The real Bridget is incredible of what she did to help other people. So, anyway, I just found that one just truly amazing. Okay, so the next thing that I want to talk about is we went to a place. It was called Muckross, and there is an old abandoned abbey. It's called Muckross Abbey, and in the middle of the abbey is this huge yew tree, and it said it was planted when the abbey was built, which was in 1448. So this tree is over 600 or 700 years old. So it's still there, and it's yew trees were very, and I talked about this in my second book, because the Druids would plant yew trees on ley lines and important places, especially in Scotland. But they also would make their wands only out of the yew tree. And they called the yew tree the tree of immortality. And it's linked to the belief in life after death and resurrection. So the yew has been associated with the eternal. And if you walk around an Irish cemetery, there are many times yews planted guarding the space. So we walked into the center of this deserted abbey, and there was this magnificent yew tree. And I sat down and I took a picture. And then we had to go back on the bus, and I'm reviewing my pictures. And I went, oh, so I want to tell you about another elemental being, the gnome, specifically the forest gnome. Now, I looked up the forest gnome, and it says that the forest gnome's skin was said to be an earthly color and looked in many ways like wood, although it was not particularly tough. However, unlike elves, who often lived in the branches of the trees, forest gnomes build their homes within the trees, carving them in a very careful manner, which was devised by the Druids, that does as little harm to the living plant as possible. So if we can bring up that picture, Chris. So on the left is the yew tree, and it's just a beautiful specimen of yew tree, and it's so healthy and it's so pretty. I couldn't get the whole canopy, but it's just gorgeous. But as I was looking at the trunk, I said, "There's a pointy hat. There's a beard. There's a gnome," and so you can see his face that I have outlined in the tree. He's got kind of a fatter little nose, but you can definitely see his pointy hat and his beard. Now, because the elementals, as I said, are said to have come from the Tuatha De Danann, who were driven underground, they come up, but they camouflage themselves. That's why people don't see leprechauns running around, or gnomes, or even the fairies, unless they want to be seen. But what better way to camouflage than to become a part of the tree? So, I got, to recap, I got fairies, I got green man, I got a gnome, I got a dragon eye, I got a salmon. I knew that this trip to Ireland was going to be magical, but it exceeded my expectations. So that's all I have time for right now to share pictures. Maybe I'll do a part 2 because I do have more pictures. It was crazy, but these were the best, and these were, I thought, some of the most amazing. So I did sit with and I did forget to show you the wheel. Let me show you this. This is, can you see that? That's the wheel of the year. There's actually an image I found. So it does exist. Okay, so as I always do, I sat with my guide Leonini yesterday, and I said, okay, give me a message for all of you today on the podcast. And this is what she gave me. When you look at a woven basket, you sometimes forget that it started as mere lengths of reed. These reeds are carefully woven one at a time, in and out, around and through, under and over, to create a pattern, and in the end to create a vessel. Your life is like the process of weaving a basket, one piece at a time, one step at a time. Your life consists of ins and outs, ups and downs, which creates your life's pattern. There is a purpose to it all, and if you look at your life through a broader perspective, you can see how one reed affects another, while at the same time creating something beautiful. Your basket will look like none other, and your pattern will be unique to you. But we tell you it is the pattern, the lessons that you intended to weave, which create the beauty of your life and your purpose. I thought that was really touching. So, since we were talking about the elementals so much today, for my card reading, I have my messages from the fairies. And this deck is by Doreen Virtue. So I'm going to pull a card with the intention that this be for everybody. And I'm just going to shuffle. So give me a second. I sure hope you enjoyed the magic of Ireland that I shared with you. There's so much available to us when we open our eyes and when we look. And I have to tell you, wherever I go, I always take a little bit of Robbie with me. And I left him at one of the stone circles. But before I did, he gave me a message. And he said, look for the light, be the light, share the light, return to the light. That was his message. So I wanted to share that with you. So, okay. So, oops, hold on 1 second. Drop some cards here. So let me shuffle this. And the fairies today want to share. And I just talked about Robbie. So what do I pick? It's the sun. It says, your son is watched over and protected as he explores his world. All right. That was for me. I apologize. Wow. That's my son speaking to me, making an appearance on the podcast. Wow. I've never had that happen. I'll pull 2 cards next time. Okay. Thank you for joining me. You take care, everybody. Bye-bye.